Today we're talking about WordPress, and more specifically, how do you use it? So if you're a beginner when it comes to WordPress, or you're new to managing your website and you're afraid that you're going to break something by poking around back there, then this is the video for you. Before we dive in, my name is Erica. I own a website design and development business called Seedling Studio, and I make videos like this one to help you manage the tech behind your online business. Don't forget to subscribe because it really helps support the channel, and if you find this video helpful, please leave a like below. Let's dive into it. Okay, so let's start going through the WordPress dashboard. You can think of your WordPress dashboard as the back end of your website if your website is on WordPress, and you can usually access it by going to yourwebsite.com/wp-admin, or you can access it typically from your hosting provider. So when you get to the WordPress dashboard, it will look something like what you're seeing here on my screen. You might have some different modules up here depending on plugins and themes and things that you have installed, but you can always kind of clear up this cluttered dashboard on WordPress by clicking up in the right-hand corner to Screen Options and ticking off any of these options that you don't want to see. So I typically just like seeing the site health status, as well as, for some plugins that I install like Google Sitekit or just WordFence, a security plugin, I like to see those things at a glance when I first log into my WordPress dashboard. We'll just be working our way down this WordPress dashboard menu. So this in the left-hand side is your navigation, how you'll navigate throughout the back end of your website. So if you have any updates available for any either WordPress core, your themes, or your plugins that you have installed, you'll see them pop up here with like a number depending on how many updates you have that need to be made to keep your site up to date. So I really recommend doing that or getting someone to help you so that they're always up to date. If you don't, then they can just pose a security risk and you might notice a decrease in performance on your website. So moving on to posts. In WordPress, I've already kind of added a draft here, but I'll just delete this and remake it to show you how this works. But you'll probably notice that when you first install WordPress, you have this dummy Hello World example post that's in here. To add a new post, so this will be like if you have a blog and you want to add a blog post or a news article, or if you have a podcast that you want to post on your website, then you can just click this Add New button. After you click Add New, you'll be brought to this new post and you can give your blog post a title. So I'll just write blog post title, and you can just enter the content for your blog post here. WordPress is now automatically using these blocks, the block editor, so you can add different things into your post by just adding any of these options if you want to do something besides text within the body of your post. So that's kind of helpful to know. The main sort of thing I want to go over about posts is this. If you click over to this post feature on the side, if you're not seeing this on the side of your screen, then just make sure you click this gear and that'll open the settings here for the page or for the post. And you'll have to just click over to the post tab instead of in the block tab of whatever block you have on your page. So here you can control the visibility of your post. When you want to publish it, you can schedule it ahead of time to post at a later date. You can control the post author here, which template it's using, the permalink you can change here. This is usually automatically after you publish it. Whatever title that you give the post will append or add itself to the end of your URL. So I'll show you a little bit later how to access the permalink settings globally, but that's kind of how that works. You can also add categories to your post directly from this post settings here. So you can add a new category, you can call it whatever you want, and just add it directly right here. And you can also add tags to your post, which is helpful if you have a search feature on your website and you want to be able to show posts easily depending on maybe common searches that people might type into the search bar on your website. And then you'll add a featured image here. This will depend on your theme and your blog post layout if this if this featured image displays on your post or where you want it to display. But for the most part, I would recommend setting a featured image here for your blog posts. Let me just move my head out of the way so we can look at the rest of this. Here you can insert a manual excerpt for your post if you want that to show up kind of on your post list or something. I typically just leave this blank And here you can also control the discussion, whether or not you're going to allow comments on this particular post. And you can also control these settings globally for all of your posts, which I'll show you how to do in just a minute. So that's kind of everything about blog posts. Then you'll have your media library. So this is where you will find all of the media or images or PDFs, whatever sort of content that you upload onto your website. For the most part, it will be images. And I really recommend either installing an image optimization plugin or using a website called TinyPNG to optimize your images before you upload them to your media library. I really advocate for keeping your media library clean and only adding content or images here that you're actually going to have in use on your website, because it's really easy for this to get very cluttered, and the more space that media library is taking up on your server, the more money you're going to have to pay, and it could potentially slow down your website. So I really advocate for trying to keep this media library as clean and as small as possible. Moving on to pages, this is very similar to posts. The process of adding a new page is very similar. It's almost identical, so I won't go through all of that all over again. But I have already added in some sample pages here. Basically, it's the same sort of thing. You'll click Add New, you'll add a title, you can edit some of the page settings, and then depending on your theme or if you're using a page builder, you can go in and design the look of that page. Okay, moving on to comments. There's typically, if you've just installed WordPress like I just did, there's some dummy content in here, which I always recommend removing. So I just hit the trash there. It will just remove itself. But any comments that people submit on your blog posts or on your website will show up here in this comment section, and you can moderate them here. So you might have some in spam or in trash, depending on if you've just gotten rid of some like I just did. But anytime you want to respond to comments or view comments that have been left on your blog posts, this is where they'll show up. Next, we're going to move on to the Appearance tab here. And the main thing I want to talk about with the Appearance item on this menu is themes. Depending on what theme you want or want to install, this is where you'll do it. So you can add a new theme by clicking Add New, and you can either browse this WordPress library of themes, or you can upload a theme that you've purchased separately. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just going to install the Hello Elementor theme here, which is a free theme that I really like to use with the Elementor page builder. And then you can click Activate, and that will be the new theme that's active now on your website. So if you go to the front end of your website by clicking this name of your website up in the left-hand corner, you'll see that the look of it has changed based on the theme that you have added. Another thing I wanted to talk about with themes is that it's always a good idea, it's best practice to only have your active theme installed as well as one backup theme. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these extra themes that are hanging out. This is just the best practice for security reasons and to keep your site performing well. So just the one active theme and the backup theme. Moving on to making customizations to your theme. This will look a little bit different depending on which theme you've decided to install. But you can customize a theme using the theme customizer. If you just click Customize here, this will open the front end of your website and then this new customization menu. I'm not going to go through every item on this menu because it's different depending on the theme that you have installed, like I said. So for some themes, this is where you'll want to go to set the maybe global colors and fonts. For the Hello Elementor theme, it's meant to work with the Elementor page builder. So the customizations, the global settings for colors and fonts and things like that are set in a different place. I'm not going to go over that in this tutorial, but just know that if you have, depending on the theme that you have installed, this is where you'll probably come to set a lot of those global settings. So I'd recommend checking out this customizer first when you are just starting with customizing WordPress. So under Appearance, you'll also see Menus, and this is where you can create menus for your website. So in the top navigation bar of your website, that's considered a menu. Usually you'll have options to help people navigate to other pages in that top navigation bar. And so you want to create a menu that's going to appear in that area of your website. You might also use menus for like a category menu on your blog post page, and you might use menus in the footer of your website. And so I've already created a couple of menus here. You can title them whatever you want, and you can edit them by just dragging or clicking pages that you want to add to these menus and clicking Add to Menu. And then you can reorder the menu items depending on how you want them to display, and you can even nest them underneath other pages, so you can create sub pages if you want to have like a drop down in your menu. I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to make sure they're all even and then make sure I click Save Menu. One note about menus is that you'll want to make sure that any page that you want to add or any item that you want to add to your menus, if it's a page on your website, you want to make sure that you have created that page already and that you have published it. Otherwise, you won't be able to add a page that doesn't exist to your menu. You feel me? But you can also add custom links to your menu. So if you have like an external link, maybe you have a login for a membership site or something like that that you want to add to your navigation or to your menu. We'll just move along to plugins. When you click here, you'll see I don't have any plugins installed on this WordPress website. It's a fresh installation. So you can go ahead and add new plugins the same way that you would add a new theme or a new page or anything by clicking Add New. And then you can browse this library of WordPress plugins directly here. You can search for them, or you can upload your own plugin or a plugin that you've purchased from somewhere by just clicking Upload Plugin, choosing a file, or dragging and dropping from your computer. There are quite a few plugins that I install pretty regularly on WordPress websites that I am developing. So if you're interested in which plugins I recommend for most WordPress websites, I'll leave a link to that post in the description. Moving on to users, you can control basically who has access to your WordPress backend by adding users here in this users section. Click Add New. And then you can create a username for people, enter their email, their information, first name, last name, all that good stuff. And let me move my head away from that side of the screen and click Add New User. They'll receive that notification and then they'll have access to your WordPress backend. You can also create different roles for people depending on what kind of access you want them to have to your WordPress backend. If you want them to have the same access as you would click Administrator. That gives them access to everything. But maybe you have someone who is contributing content to your website, like helping you blog or something, and then maybe you just want to have them as an editor so that they can add content to your website without accessing maybe any of the other plugins or features that they don't really need access to. Next, we're going to go on to tools, and there's not really too much to go over here, but you may notice that as you add plugins, they'll either be added as menu items just directly to this left kind of sidebar, or you'll find them under tools or settings. So if you're trying to use a plugin or access the settings of a plugin and you can't seem to find it, I would recommend hovering over tools and looking for the name of that plugin there. And then if it's not there, hover over settings and look for that plugin there. If you go to general settings, you'll be able to see your site title. So you can rename your website here. You can add a tagline if you'd like. You'll see your URL here. I'm just on a local installation of WordPress, so this isn't available out on the internet, but yours will look a little bit different. And then you'll see your administrator email address, which you can change at any time. There's lots of different settings. You can set your time zone, your date, and your time. Just some general kind of settings about how things appear on your website. If you go to writing settings, this is basically some settings having to do with writing blog posts. So you can explore these. I don't typically spend a lot of time in this particular section of WordPress. A more important or kind of more frequently accessed part for me is the reading settings. This is where you'll be able to set which page is your home page in WordPress. So I always recommend clicking this static page and then selecting whichever page you've created to be your home page. And then for your posts page, it's typically something like blog, or if you have a podcast, it might be your podcast page. This is also where you can control how many posts display on your blog pages. And in your blog post feed, if you want the full text of your entire blog post to show up on those feeds, or if you just want an excerpt. Moving on to discussion settings, this will control all of the ways that people can comment or discuss your blog posts. So if you want to disable comments or enable comments or just change the settings around how people can comment, this is where you would do it, under settings discussion. I definitely recommend, if you're not going to use a comment moderation plugin to help prevent spam, I would really recommend changing this to 1, because typically spammers will be putting a lot of links in their comments. You'll see you probably get a lot of spam comments, and it's just frustrating. So if that really starts to bother you, then I can recommend the Akismet plugin. It's an anti-spam plugin. I will briefly touch on permalinks. This is the structure of basically the links or URL that your website uses. And so anytime you add a new blog post or page to your website, this is what controls what that link is going to appear like. I always like to stick with post name. Just one thing to note though is that I would really recommend choosing one of these from the very beginning of starting your website and sticking with it, because anytime that you come in here and you change this permalink structure for your website, it's going to change all of the past posts and pages that you've created, and that could be a real headache if you have ever published your posts or shared them on social media or in emails or things like that, because they're not going to be accessible at those old links anymore. So that's pretty much all that there is to know from a high level. That was your complete overview of the WordPress dashboard. I hope you found it helpful. There's so much more to learn about WordPress, so make sure you subscribe and come back here for more helpful content about managing your website. And of course, if you have any questions about WordPress or anything having to do with your website, go ahead and leave them down below in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!